Hello and welcome to the Wild West podcast. Of course, Alex has a smug grin on his face after this past weekend's victory from his Kansas City Chiefs. I am Richie Riche of the MHRT Network. My beard is growing out long because it is fracking cold, and I've had another 1.5 feet of snow because why not? And Jack is sitting here.
Yeah, look, I'm outside.
It's sunny where I am. Anywho, guys, we're gonna go right into the Chiefs-Bills game. May well have been one of the best games, if not the best game of the NFL season thus far, if we're going to be perfectly honest, as football fans, even though the rest of our teams were not playing. We would be remiss if we didn't touch back upon a subject of last week's show, which has blown up in the media, and I think it behooves us to then bring back up and discuss again a little bit of the officiating, especially considering a lot of it actually surrounds Alex's Chiefs as a point of contention, if you will. I'm using very guarded language, Alex, to try to soften the blow. But let's start on a positive note for you and your fellow KC fans. Victory over the Bills. What were your thoughts?
Yes,
what do you think you did well? What do you think you did well? What do you think you didn't? And let's get right into it.
Yeah, so ultimately, Chiefs, I think, actually became the first team in history to actually get to the Super Bowl at the chance of the three-peat. So, compared to, I think they were the 10th team as a whole to try to go for it, but the first one to actually make it back. But yeah, the game as a whole was definitely, it went like I thought it would. I know last week I said this would be very much, arguably the best game of the year. And would be very much that prized like title fight of back and forth. And I mean, that's what it was. Statistically speaking, statistically speaking, I mean, the teams were neck and neck in terms of total yards, passing yardage, rushing yardage, yards per play. But as I, have kind of alluded to last week, where I said I thought the biggest X factor for Chiefs success or whoever would win would be, who could get the most 3 and outs or create stalled drives for the opposing offense. And, just looking at the stats, that definitely was, the key factor in this game. Because you saw that Buffalo was 5 for 14 on 3rd down and 4 for 6 on 4th down. And I'd also throw in two different 2-point conversion attempts they went for that the defense also got stops on. So, that was the big.
That was huge.
They didn't really do anything exceptionally well, like from start of the game to end of the game. But, in typical Mahomes Chiefs fashion, they stepped up when the moment called for them to do that. You have crucial defense gets the Bills to go, 3 and out first drive, and then offense just methodically drives down the field and scores. And then, we see a little bit more explosiveness with kind of spreading the ball and attacking the middle of the field. They weren't overly efficient in running the ball, the Chiefs at least, but, at that same time, Mahomes had 2 pretty clutch runs, 2 rushing touchdowns. Worthy, who, I think full circle, it's interesting to note at least that Buffalo traded that pick to Kansas City to pick Worthy. And, he has over 100 all-purpose yards in the game.
Biting him in the ass.
Yeah, caught a touchdown, had another catch, that was looked at, but was called a catch down, to the inside the 5. Like he definitely made his presence known in this game. And for how good of a defense Buffalo had in terms of creating pressure and things like that. Offensively, they did like left tackle. I talked about that being a crucial component to the Chiefs being successful, and they did go with Joe Tooney, the all-pro left guard, and he gave up 0 sacks and 0 pressures. in that game. So, I mean, the two biggest things I noted that needed to be done happened, and I think that's kind of the put a bow on it, so to speak. Of like, yeah, the Chiefs didn't go out and blow anything away crazy like offense or stuff them defensively, but like, they were successful in those two key factors of not giving up any pressures from the left side of the line and, creating 3 and outs or stalling Buffalo drives, which, they did in huge moments. And honestly, like, there was a stretch, I know we were texting a little bit, where Buffalo came out in the second half and kind of committed to the run game and was doing pretty effective at it. And
I would go as far as saying dominating at that point. Obviously your team did come back, but I think we have to be honest and say, like they were dominating at that stage of the game, like, for sure.
I mean, yeah, I'd have to go look at the like play by play, but I mean, they were busting off just like chunk play after chunk play, running the ball, and there was that moment where I like, they're getting momentum. This is like they've figured out what they need to do to keep Mahomes off the field and put points on the board for themselves. And then
they also they also flipped Spag's script at that point too, right? Because Spagnuolo actually to that point of the game had really done a number actually on the Bills offensive line. He had a fantastic. I mean, this should come as a surprise to nobody. Certainly not me. He had a fantastic game plan coming into it. There is a reason why the dude is being considered as a head coach candidate for other teams. And there's also a reason why the dude's like won like the most Super Bowls or almost the most Super Bowls out of any defensive coordinator. He is very, very good. If not,
he's already writing his ticket.
Arguably gold jacket. Actually,
right. That's what
I think best D coordinator in the league right now, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
yeah, he didn't. He had a plan for Allen.
I wouldn't call him the best D coordinator. I would call him like the best like big game D coordinator.
Yeah, I mean,
because if he was the best D coordinator, you guys would have like a top 5 defense every year, right?
They do.
Yeah, but you got to work with the salary cap that you have too. So I mean, he's always finding guys to replace players coming in, just like McDuffie.
And the big thing about him is, like I think holistically speaking, or as like from his fundamental values of how he wants to do a defense, he wants to constantly bring pressure, bring 6 at all times. But he found, I think, kind of a savvy medium when in these big games where teams expect him to do that and he doesn't, and he gives them this one specific look the whole game where he doesn't blitz. So then at the end of the game, a la the last play for Josh Allen, he didn't blitz out of that look the whole game, and then fourth and whatever, they have to get it to keep the game going. Boom, he sends 6 out of it. But he's just and that was another thing I talked about before the game was the chess match between Spags and Josh Allen, and how would he go about kind of taking some of his game, like his game and the components of what Josh Allen brings out of the game, and I think he did a pretty good job, like I said, doing that when they needed to halt the momentum that was gaining and kind of flip the script. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just a great,
that's the
best great game. Like, yeah, great game. Like, I mean, it's just what Mahomes does, man. He elevates in these situations. Like, I mean, first time all year they score over 30 points. Like, I mean, it was only 32, but like that's what he knew he needed to beat Buffalo. And then, it also is, I think some of it too is just kind of this allure that the Chiefs seem to have now when they play these teams that, they seem to make mistakes or make moves, to what they think they got to do to beat Kansas City, and ends up biting them in the ass. Like, Buffalo went for 2 different 2-point conversions where if they would have just kicked it, I mean, it's a totally different landscape at the end of the game. And,
it's like
goes for it on fourth down. Yeah. Like,
Southtown Raider Michael contested that when we watched the game together this weekend. That's all he talked about. Like, why are they going for 2? Why are they going for 2? Go for 1.
Dude, yeah, it's crazy.
the
Sorry.
points.
No, they
But-
had to, Jack. No, Jack, they had to because they
I mean,
were
it
looking
made
at
sense to me, like based on the score. But you look back on and like you look back on anything, it made a lot of sense afterwards. But at the time, for me, yeah, I agreed with going for the 2.
I mean, yeah,
when you look at where they're at, it made total sense to go for 2 because they were at a point where they were at a deficit in the game, so they
By
had to
2
then
points.
make up that. No, and they wanted to kind of get to that level, even playing field, and so realistically speaking, if you're going to be quite honest, they're looking at the long play there. They're saying, okay, so what, we leave a point on the board, okay, but we've still narrowed the gap to less than a field goal. So they kind of looked at it, and frankly, I completely agree that it was a moot point. Like, they either get it or they don't, and it's basically the same point.
yeah.
And Raiders, I agree. I agree, man. Like that.
I
like,
understand. I understand why they did it, but that also goes to what I was saying, and just it seems that like in these moments, playing Kansas City, teams are almost too over analytical on what they need to do.
Or
Right,
they get
like-
too cute.
Like they're trying to be
calling.
2 steps ahead when like really just live in the moment. And
I just feel like teams, when they play Kansas City, they feel like you have to be more aggressive because Kansas City just is a team that always finds a way to win. Mahomes is like the most clutch player in the NFL, and your team is so good, it's like you have to kind of go for it because otherwise you just may not get that chance.
Biggie, come
Biggie.
on.
Hey, Gord, say what you got.
I'm actually not going to lie, Alex. Just on that point there, the Big E Bronco brought up. We'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe in the show. But I have heard some folks, as part of their refereeing, flag, no flag, so on and so forth, basically say, "Hey, here's the deal." And sorry, Big E, I had to do this. I couldn't help but, think, one of those when I read
$1 trillion.
when I read your comment. But in terms of the
I'm
Austin
just
Powers,
picturing Dr. Evil say, "Go out there and take Mahomes' head off." $1
I will give them
billion.
$1 billion. Yeah,
1 million.
yeah. But anyways, the thing is, it's an interesting concept because it's actually not the first time I've heard a comment like that. I've heard actually several comments throughout X and actually even on TV make similar statements, which is to say, all right, well, if these quarterbacks are going to be so heavily protected and they're going to get 15-yard penalties and you're going to get fined for slightly aggressive hits anyway, you may as well make them count.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Right.
And it's actually sad that commentary is going in that direction in the NFL, where this is a contact sport. Anyone who's been a fan of the show knows my stance on this, which is I don't think quarterbacks should have any protection. Welcome to the NFL. Enjoy the pain. That's my general feedback on it. And frankly,
if you're out of the pocket, then yeah, I mean,
no,
then you're a runner.
No,
in my mind.
No. The answer is no. This is a contact sport.
I agree, but you're the guy who breaks his leg and still runs a mile on it.
I don't care. That's fine. Then let me be the flag bearer in terms of what an NFL player should be. Right? Like, this is my point.
That doesn't sell, though. People don't.
Sure, it does. People are still talking about the play where the dude broke his leg and it it's like the crack of the bone that like the world heard round, right?
Yeah, but do you want to go watch Trey Lance play Jake Browning?
No.
When your two teams are squaring off because we're just letting dudes high fly around and Troy Polamalu every quarterback.
No, but I mean, maybe we can cover this off later. But my answer to that is to have a separate salary cap for quarterbacks that will enable you to have a backup quarterback that is appropriately paid.
Unfortunately,
and
QB
I think
play as a whole, as league wide, is down. QB play throughout the league is just trash. So trying to find a backup is next to impossible these days. That it can play any resemblance of decent football.
Gord's commented, that's funny.
Yeah. It's all right, dude.
Ouch.
I mean, you're already pairing him to Canton, so
Yeah.
you see the writing on the wall. And people used to say the same thing about Tom Brady when he was going on his run and the Patriots. So, like I said, it's just part of the stigma of continuing to win. People got to find something to justify why it keeps happening, other than the fact that, this is a year in, year out championship caliber team that just does not make mistakes in these moments, in these games.
I think the Chiefs are probably one of the best. Well, let's just look like 5 years, right? Let's just do 5 years. Probably one of the better offenses, better defenses. They have an elite GM, elite head coach, elite defensive coordinator, elite QB.
Everything is elite on the team.
No, I wouldn't say everything because
for the most part. That's why they're in the Super Bowl for 3 years in a row.
Their weapons in the last couple of years have not been elite. Like they have decent guys. They have role players they bring in.
But they fit.
End of his career, Hopkins, Hollywood Brown is not known to be.
That's what the Patriots did too, though. That's
Right.
exactly what the Patriots did too. I'm not trying to cut you off, DZ, but this is exactly what the Patriots did. The Patriots recognized the different cogs that they required in different stages and different phases as they're in their team's development, and they just simply brought them in and they all worked. Now, I think kind of what people are generally getting at here is that there are certain plays that are being either called or not called, depending on how your perspective is here. And in some regards, it has to do with the entertainment aspect, which is almost kind of what you were getting at, Alex, in terms of, well, do you want to watch, dude off the street and, the other rando dude from the, the other rando, do you look, as much as I love Kendall Hinton from my Denver Broncos, the fact that he jumped in and played quarterback as like the 9th string quarterback in that one game, no one was looking at that and saying, dude, the quarterbacking was amazing, right? Like, I think we can kind of agree on that, right?
He's in Canton, though.
He's in Canton, though. So, I mean, dude, good for you. But I completely agree with DZ, what you're kind of getting at here, which is the Chiefs are coached at an elite level, have clearly an elite level quarterback, and that's just, I'm sorry, I don't care who you are.
Well, the most elite level quarterback in the NFL. And not enough credit given to the general manager. We're talking about bringing these players in. I mean, the general manager, he's been spot on. I mean, literally, like, where are we seen any misses this season? I mean, people are getting hurt. He's bringing guys in, and there's no drop off.
And during this period of time with Mahomes, he has hit on every early pick he's had, which, I mean, that's obviously the draft, helps you progress forward or sets you back. And I mean, really the only pick he missed on was taking Breeland Speaks in the second round, which, to be fair, we didn't have a first round pick because we traded to take Mahomes. So, it is, but that guy, that's really the only guy I can think of that he's spent, and Sky Moore. That's not right. And McCole Hardman. Those are the three. But again, you're also talking about some guys that contributed, but I mean, he's hit on every first, second, third round
last
pick.
Two played roles though.
What's his name? Honest, I don't even know his name, to be honest with you. What's his name, Alex?
Brett Beach.
Brett Beach.
Beach.
Brett Beach. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Alex, to your point, even those guys that were misses,
they caught touchdowns in Super Bowls.
They did. Yeah, they did. And they played roles within the team that actually contributed to winning games and getting to the Super Bowl. Now, they weren't like a Tyreek Hill where, if they're not on the field, they're not going to, it's not like your team's going to tank, right? But they played significant cog roles, as DZ was.
That is fair, Biggie. They also, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they did miss on.
Oh, that's right. So. You're right.
I'm speaking a little out of pocket.
You're right.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
He's kind of the most recent dude that's kind of got that law firm name, right?
Yeah, the Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis dude.
Yeah, he's got the law firm name, but so I think you're right. I mean, but again, even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he had games where he contributed to the team, where he made a couple key plays that ended up getting you to the thing. He was just never consistent. That's, I think, what the issue is. That there was dudes that contributed that were not consistent, and therefore you were able to move on from them without having. Jacoby Myers has been amazing as a player for the Raiders, for example, right? In Myers, the wide receiver.
He's a fantasy little trinket.
I like Jacoby.
He did better than Devontae this year, so
I know.
Cheers for him.
Jacoby's one of those guys you have in fantasy that you can't get rid of because he scores too much, but you're almost never going to play him.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So you're like, damn, I respect his game, but I can't put him in.
Yeah. He seems to always produce, but not necessarily in the right ways that are going to be the thing that's going to make you pull the trigger. Right?
Alex, when did Veach get to KC? Was it before Mahomes?
So he wasn't GM when they drafted Mahomes, but the story, was Mahomes was Veach's guy. And even when he wasn't the assistant GM or whatever he was, player personnel, he was constantly showing Andy Reid and John Dorsey at the time. He's like, you got to watch this kid from Texas Tech. Like, this is our quarterback. This is our guy. And then Dorsey took Mahomes, but it was from kind of, Veach's blessing, if you will, to get there. And then they drafted Mahomes 2017, and then Dorsey left, and then Veach took over.
He inherited a 12-4 team.
Yeah, I mean, he started off. Yeah, I mean, they went about it in the right way. The rebuild.
Probably had the best start to a career that any player in the NFL has ever had, probably.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
absolutely.
He has never finished a season worse than being in the AFC Championship game since he started. So the longest, that's just crazy to think about to me. Like, since he has become a starting quarterback, his last game of the year has at least been the AFC title game.
That's nuts.
He only lost to Brady.
Now,
right?
Alex, what would be interesting in that?
Burrow.
He lost to Brady and Burrow.
Well, I mean, Brady in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. What would be super interesting, Alex, is, and this is something that Mahomes has never dealt with, is what happens when, and it's going to happen at some point in the near future. Like, I'm sorry, our division right now is too strong to not eventually have one of our three teams, obviously excluding KC, to not elevate to eventually, become, say a first seed over KC or whatever. It's going to happen. So you have DZ's team that in the first year literally flip the script. We had
two of the teams were already in the playoffs this year. So I mean, it's they're knocking on the door,
Yeah. And then you bring in Pete Carroll to back that up. It's probably one of the best coached divisions now in the NFL.
I agree.
Got a lot of career wins and Super Bowl appearances and titles.
So right after this, we're going to cover off that Raiders news because that's a big deal as well. But Alex, like I said, a super interesting game for your Chiefs. There was obviously a couple controversial calls in the game as well, which, even as a Chiefs fan, you have to kind of say, I agree. Like, because if the roles were reversed, I'm sure you would have been kind of questioning a little bit as well. Particularly the Allen tush push, if you will.
You ain't gonna convince me on this one, dude. That ball was not over the line. So,
Blandino
seems to think it was.
Yeah, there's a lot to do, but I in real time watching the replay, ball never crossed the line. Like his body was over it, sure, but that's not the rule.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and even with that, I just don't think there was enough to overturn what was called on the field. And that's, I think, what kind of people forget is like that's the burden of proof, if you will, to win the review process. Like if they're looking at a fumble, they call it fumble on the field, and it's a giant jumbled pile, and you can't see anything. They're going to say, yeah, it's a fumble.
Well, they're talking about changing the rules next year, or I'm going to be a replay.
Of course.
I don't get it,
Bills
man.
lost.
You have pylons with cameras in the end zone. You also have markers, first down markers, and then I thought they put like sensors in the football, or they were experimenting with something like that. Like, get it together. This is what I don't understand, is that this is the whole entertainment aspect where you have refs who can decide games by.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, and when DZ, if you remember, Richie made a good point. Put body cams on all these refs too.
Yeah.
Get some more cameras on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, gives you more angles.
Jack, that's 100% correct. It's like this is the challenge that we have with what we saw. There was a clip. Like I'm going to disagree with Alex on this one. Alex and I agree on a lot, but we have our mutual disagreements where we agree to disagree. That's what kind of makes this show kind of fun, right? Is we can have four guys that agree on a bunch, disagree on a bunch, but at the end of the day, we can speak civilly to one another and get through the end of the show. I am pretty much basically aligned with what Big E said, based on my vantage point where I saw the line both on the standard game film and on the kind of the flip cam where they kind of put like where the line of gain was and kind of where Allen got to. My general take on it was that I believed that the ball itself did in fact make the line of gain, albeit barely. I'm not saying that it was like this like huge, volleyed kind of over the line and then brought back and it was like so egregious. It was definitely a close call. No argument from me on that front. I do believe the ball crossed the line of gain. And this is part of the challenge with the way that the rules are written. One, I don't believe there's enough close cams up to really determine enough information to make those calls well. And then two, I also think that we shouldn't have refs being able to determine in such a big way outcomes of the game. I think that there needs to be an even-handed league interference in major calls, especially in games of this magnitude. Like you're talking who's making it to the Super Bowl. Like I just think that this is too important.
It's a game of inches, right?
Yeah, it's just it's too important.
I love what you said about putting sensors in the football and sensors on the chain, and it's like that the ball's down. Use that technology.
Like, there's no way in today's world you can't put some kind of like everyone has trackers on their wallets, keys, phones, everything now. Like tells you where your damn wallet is with an AirTag. Like you can't put that same thing in the tip of a football and have a sensor on each yard line.
No, but you don't even need that.
It's like when you drive your car, it tells you, you look at your Google Maps or whatever, it tells you how fast you're driving, exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
So why not?
No, but it's even more egregious than that. Like with the predominance of AI now and how good it is, and it's getting scary in some regards.
Unfortunately,
in terms of how good
scary
AI
good.
is. Yeah. I mean, there's some good and there's some bad, and I don't think we really need to
know it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but when you look at how sharp AI is at recognizing elements and figuring out where that is, there is so many different things that the NFL could be leaning on as a crutch to further improve the game that we all know and love, to avoid this. It's just a fact. And
I believe they don't want
one better. Yeah, there's definitely, I think, an argument to the human element being part of sport. Like it's kind of the same thing you see with the robot umpires, and but I'll do you one better, Richie. With this developing AI, why don't we just create humanly AI enhanced quarterback and give every team the same player? And we could just tell the team.
There's no human element there.
Robot.
No, but that's a bit disingenuous, because what you're going to end up with is you end up with what makes you then lose all of the benefits of like having a good
Well, if you want to create a
GM,
different
and you
league
lose
and
all
just
the
have a bunch of
benefits
robots, you know,
Yeah.
like
I think
those
that's what I'm
combat
gonna
robots
do.
beat each other up.
It's gonna be football, but every team's got a maxed
what
out
we're
QB.
referring but what we're referring to here is more of the impact of doing things the right or the wrong way. I think you want the human element when it comes to players, their ability, and all that sort of thing. Because I mean, a guy like Mahomes is once in 20, 30 years. A guy like Peyton Manning is once in 20, 30 years kind of thing. They happen to have a very modest amount of overlap at best. But again, you're talking about Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes. There's a reason why we can list these guys off the top of our heads. There's not many of them. Like, it's just a straight fact, right? And so each one of these guys brings a unique element to the game. Manning was the cerebral element, and then you ended up with a guy like Mahomes, who's developed the cerebral element, but was largely actually a physical talent to the game before he really actually developed any kind of mental eliteness when it came to the NFL. And even Mahomes is the one to even tell you that, because he said it up front. So I actually think that it's a complete different element to saying, hey, throw a robot that can chuck a ball like 90 yards. But where I do think is important is what you don't want is a call as critical as what is a first down.
Well, like, what is a catch?
Or what is a catch? Which, by the way, Aikman, I think, was the one that really nailed it on the head, which is to say, I just watched a dude land the ball with 2 feet in bounds without bobbling, and they literally called it not a catch.
Yeah.
He goes, I don't understand. Like, this makes no sense.
Or they'll call it a catch like next week in a different game, and you're just like, hang on, what?
Yeah.
Come on,
man.
And Richie, to like piggyback on what you said about, a quarterback that's generational every 20 or 30 years. But if you think about it, I mean, you mentioned the top 3 quarterbacks that probably have ever played in the NFL. And I think that has a lot to do with the technology of being able, watch these replays and being able to watch this type of film, where the older generations just didn't have that. And if you did, you had like maybe one angle, and now you got 30 angles to look at it. So I think the quarterbacks are getting better and better and better.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels' VR. Supposedly he can see things like way faster, like plays developing and things from what he's got going on in DC, which I think is probably going to be. I don't know if everybody's doing it league wide.
No,
I was saying
you're
we were always brought up, like as football fans, like football is a game of inches,
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. But then it's like, this is where I hate to harp on this, but this is where it grinds my gears. Is it's a game of inches, but we let refs decide. And I'm like, take out the Chiefs, just take the Chiefs out of it. But we let refs. The NFL is choosing to let humans decide the game.
Can I pause it for 1/2 second? Wait, scroll up. This is like breaking news. Matt, is that true? Matt Marinovich, is that true?
I called this already. I
was hoping. And I'm sorry to jump in, but that's like breaking news on the show. That's huge.
Yeah, right before I came on, that they were saying that, I was like, oh, cool. So it's coming true. But I think Patrick Graham is like, like, who else is out there? There's nobody really out there that would be better than him.
Jacket's confirmed.
I think he's hired in San Fran.
Oh,
Yeah.
Now I got something to talk
Patrick
about.
Graham's confirmed.
Yeah. That is awesome.
To returning.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good, because then there's some sort of.
I disagree, but we'll talk about that after we're done with the Chiefs segment here. But I agree with all the stuff we're saying. It's just the NFL has made a conscious decision to allow people to make decisions and determine the outcomes of the game. But I also think it's a completely valid comment to come at this from a fan to say, all right, well, when the NFL was first formed, an HD camera or a 4K or 8K camera was a pipe dream. Yeah. Having a camera scroll up and down the field was a a non-starter. Having a camera that's able to recognize objects on its own was like futuristic Jetsons crap, right? And then, and that's a reference for all of you who are, you know, older like I am. And no one thought that kind of stuff was even possible. That it was all, you know, kind of, sort of, maybe. And so the question is, all right, now that we have all of the tools at our disposal, is now perhaps not the time to actually have an honest dialogue and conversation? We can get accurate outcomes from the current technology that we have that would be superior potentially to some of the human calls that we have on the field, legitimately, not even subjectively, legitimately. So is now the time to perhaps look to shift? I'm not saying we should, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but at the very least, I think that there needs to be a real hard-fought and deeply discussed dialogue on which is better.
Yeah, I mean, I like you said, all those things that were pipe dreams back in the day and are, you know, a fixed part of the game. I truly believe that, you know, within the next 5 years, there will be kind of a scorched earth changed landscape of how games are officiated, how that's reviewed, and all of that. I mean, they're already taking steps, you know, like Jack mentioned, they're talking about making those types of plays and hits on the QB reviewable thing for next year. So, you know, there definitely is going to be change in that regard at a more expedited rate. I believe that.
I just think it's because it's the first time in the NFL where the players from so many players are now, you know, talking about it. Where I don't remember, like with Brady, except for maybe like the Tuck rule, you know, and it was only Raider players, but now it's like, you know, across the league, it's starting to get talked about more. So maybe it's just, again, it's technology. Again, we're talking technology. So much more. There's Instagram and Facebook and all these different outlets for media and people having their own YouTube shows, you know, that are players that are doing this stuff. So
yeah. I think they said next year they're looking at to make a rule of making face mask plays reviewable for the first time.
I think
that's going to be kind of like, I mean, that could be like every freaking play, though. I mean, think about it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what process they have. Like, is it a New York thing where they just, you know, buzz in like, hey, that was a face mask, throw the flag, like before the play, or do they have, you know, are they taking time for the, you know, ref to go quickly review it? Like, I'm curious to see how they do that. But, you know, it like those calls, like they, you know, they are what they are. But at the end of the day, you also got to like look at why did Buffalo continuously try to do the tush push when it wasn't working?
Or
you know?
Why did they only rush James Cook 16 times?
Yeah, like it's just, you know, that allure of playing Kansas City and teams get over analytical or think this, you know, one specific thing is going to work and just continuously try to do it. And, you know, they had that. I mean, I think they tried to do that same play on every 2-point conversion, and at least, you know, one other time in a short yardage situation, the Chiefs stopped them on all of them. So,
yeah.
So actually, going back.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So going back to the previous piece we were just talking about, I want all of your feedback on this. So I'll start with you, DZ, once I'm done making the comment here. Here's my suggestion that the NFL can do as maybe a first step to kind of put something out there, test a concept, and kind of go from there. Why not have AI trained in games to detect face mask penalties throughout the game, have it send an alert to say face mask detected, and then have that go alongside the in-person ref calls in terms of what's called and what's not, and then publish those results to the fans in terms of what was caught by AI and what was missed by the refs. And
I don't know about that, Richie.
No,
like
but hear me
like
out.
a game after stat or something.
Yeah, and then kind of say like this at some point this is going to come up. So why not own the thing up front?
That's
Why
too
not
much
say-
accountability, though. I mean, but I get
Well,
what you're
the one
saying.
thing I see is like, okay, so if you're the running back and you're doing a face push, it's going to trigger that. It's like, oh, was that a face mask? Because he pushed off.
Right, but as part of that accountability, Jack, the NFL will put out false positives as well to say AI in this go round counted that as a face mask. We reviewed that in a 8K zoom in. That was a false positive. And we're now retraining the AI to then kind of go, and overcome that. And this is kind of the way the AI works, right? Is that AI requires data in order to then improve and get better and not make the same mistake.
Then we're gonna have like 4 or 5 hour, Baltimore games with their running back.
I'm not saying to use the AI in game yet, because I think it would need to be developed and actually trained. But the point is that to show accountability to the fans, that the NFL is actually seriously listening to their feedback and the fact that the officiating needs to be held to account in some regards. And I think that that's a good first step. I also agree with this, which is the refs truly need to be full-time. This needs to be their only gig. This needs to be.
Aren't they full-time now? Aren't they making like $650,000 a year by doing this?
They're making a boatload of money, but they're not full-time. This is a side gig. It just happens to be the most profitable side gig ever, but it is a side gig nonetheless. So it is what it is. I mean, aside from really lucrative OnlyFans women and drug dealers, an NFL ref is like a close third or fourth as a side hustle. But it is what it is, right? But no, this is an unfortunate truth, is that refs are still part-time in the NFL, and I do agree. I think that if the NFL wants to truly treat this as a serious issue, that the refs need to be kind of locked in as full-time employees.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. Because like literally a ref should be the type of person that lives, eats, and breathes the rule book and learning and honing their craft just as players. Like we expect our players on our teams to go home and say, man, how did I miss that catch, and how can I make that the next 10 times that it's thrown to me?
And I got to give a shout. Richie, you make a really good point. So, watching, Cap Show with Violator and Ref Guru, he says that the training program hasn't changed since like 1979. And I agree. Yeah. They should be in there watching all off season, like every, play that's like, oh, it could go this way, it can go that way. Let's learn, let's teach from it. So that way the next season it gets even better versus just going through the basics of what they want to what the NFL wants to focus on. So, Ref, I know I don't think you're out there, but salute, brother. That's a good call. Mm-hmm. And that's coming from an NFL referee.
Mm-hmm. So, Alex, is there anything else from the game and the Chiefs that you might be concerned about as you look ahead for your team?
I mean, not really any that I can comment on right now. Certainly, probably will have more concerns next week when I do
as you dig into it.
More
we need to talk about all that.
Preview, but I mean, again, like I said, it's hard to have concerns or not have faith in your team when they've done what they've done up to this point, and continuously find themselves back to playing for a Super Bowl title. So, until he can't be successful with that, which I mean, I guess he has once, but I mean, you always have faith with Mahomes and Reed.
Yeah. And this is actually the one thing, Rick, thank you for posting this comment, by the way. This is exactly so
Filing
this is actually
the copyright right now.
Yeah. So this is actually exactly where I've heard the football purists come into the conversation when it comes to altering officiating and that sort of thing, which is the NFL has lasted this long while allowing for the human error element to be part of the game.
Sure.
Whereas what you are aptly and correctly pointing out in this comment, I 100% is, if there are things that can be proven just because AI can track things that a human eye is really not capable of doing per se, and say, like it or not, that ball crossed the plane. Like it or not, that ball did in fact make the first down gain, so on and so forth. These are things that were not technologies that existed when the NFL first started, but are certainly and for sure not only possible now, but more importantly, accurate beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point in our technological progress. So
I mean, for the purists,
this is actually the argument. Do you keep it pure, or do you actually want to? Do you keep it pure human, or do you want the actual honest truth no matter what? And this is literally the argument. So I think
I don't see how people want to keep it pure, because the stakes in the NFL rise every year. The league betting has become so huge. There's so much money every year. I mean, you go back,
it's
you
insane.
can go 10 years.
Insane.
Huh?
It's insane.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money just blows your mind.
NFL is a religion. It's like soccer.
The NFL is like its own country.
It is.
I mean,
yeah.
So the stakes are so high now that to just have the human element, we are humans. We make mistakes, as we've seen growing up watching football games. I mean, I remember the Ed Hockley rule when I was at that game that rule happened. It was a Broncos Chargers game, I believe. And I think it was in San Diego, or it was like the game after, either way. But I mean, it's just the stakes are so high now. I think fans just want it to be fair. They're like, we need to make this as fair as possible for both sides. Beat me with your best players, coaches. And that's what we've seen the Chiefs do. Chiefs probably have, out of all teams in the league, the most stability outside maybe Tomlin, right? That's the only other coach I can think of. But I mean, from all the people I listed earlier in the show, like, they are super stable with elite people at all facets of their team. So it's like they're like, so the rest of the teams are like, okay, cool, let's just make this as equal and as level playing field as possible. They beat us, oh well. But then when you start seeing throughout social media, and we watch the games, I'm watching the game too, and this is kind of a funny thing. I'm not drinking anymore during the games. Like, I would be like, boozing and stuff, having a good time, kickbacks and beers. I have like one or two now, and I'm watching these games, and I've got a bigger TV. I've got like a 70 freaking inch TV. I'm watching these things, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, these calls, like my chick, my wife, whatever, fiance, she's a aerospace engineer. She's a diehard football fan like me. She watches these games and she's like, that's a blown call. That call, that was not a catch. Like, all this stuff. And I'm like, what do you know? So we argue. She's way smarter than me and she enjoys the game a lot. And we're like, we have to figure this out. They've got to implement some sort of technology to make this better, because there's rumblings, and I'm sure Alex has seen it, but the thing is boycott the Super Bowl this year. And that's the only way the NFL is going to feel this, is if their viewership is down on
It's not going to be down.
It's not, because they have a good halftime show, right? It's going to, and the Eagles fan base is massive, but
that's actually the real issue, D said, that the Eagles fan base, since they're in the Super Bowl, is so substantial that they want, and let's also not forget that this Super Bowl matchup is conveniently a repeat.
Sure. So,
right?
But, I mean, how else do you tell the NFL as a fan, we're just nobodies, right? We're ants. We're decimals. Like, how else do they change for better? It doesn't seem like any of these rules have been getting better. Like the kickoffs and all that stuff, this player safety, it's all BS in my mind. Like, none of this has been for player safety. The game is getting watered down. It seems like every few years. We're watching. It's just getting really weird watching. And look, I'm not talking about the Chiefs. I've already said they're the top of the mountaintop. We got to chase them and get to them. It's just I watch it league wide, and I'm like, this is horrible. This is, like, what's going on? Like, they've got to stop it. And how as a fan do you?
Well, DZ, it's like the one thing that's like, just to kind of even change it to a different sport for a half second with the technology, is like, you look at baseball, that's all about, do we take away from the umpire calling that a strike versus the ball? And you got the box on your TV, and the same thing, put the little chip in the baseball, and, you got that box is, have it read it and take out the umpire and let him just call, different plays, like a play at home plate or something like that.
There's an element in baseball, like when the umps start calling like some bogus stuff. When you got a player who knows they're doing, they'll start mouthing to the ump. We've seen it all the time. Like the teams I follow, we got players they'll start mouth off, and then you start seeing that ump reeling in his calls. He starts paying attention a little better. That doesn't happen all the time, but that's the thing. In the NFL, I don't know. I mean, I remember Brady. Everybody be like, Brady's always calling for freaking flags, this and that. It's just, why are players constantly looking for a penalty every play? They're like, look, that shouldn't be allowed. Like, flopping's not allowed. In other sports, you get
in basketball, that's a penalty.
Yeah.
Like
that's pretty. I mean, that's newer than
now. Yet now in football, we're seeing people purposely flopping, like in the gladiator sport. Like, what the hell is going on?
Why wouldn't they though?
But they're exactly because they are
you
gaining
can.
the system. Because
that's exactly it. Why wouldn't they?
The stakes are so high, they're gaining the system. This is why I'm saying, look, for me, I personally don't like it. Maybe I'm an old head. I'm like right in the middle. I'm not old and I'm not young. I'm 41 years old. So I remember growing up with that old generation of football. You know what I mean? And then I'm watching this new generation of football, this faster, higher scoring, game. And it's just this, I have this like balancing act I'm doing, spiritually with the game I love, It's just,
right?
It's weird. It's bizarre right
now.
And
you're on the same page with Richie. And I look at the Raiders from the 70s. It's like, who are we going to get in a fight with, this week? Let's go. Let's tear someone's head off. I missed that, type of play with the defense.
My biggest thing here is I can't, it's been no secret. I come from a huge line of contact sport guys. This is what my family has done for generations. The men in my family are pretty crass and pretty blunt. It's just kind of the way we roll. and so our general thing is that if you break a bone, if you can still step and walk on it, then you continue doing what you need to do to get the job done, and then you can go get yourself looked at after. Is kind of our mental mindset. Now, I also recognize that may not be the healthiest thing. So I understand that too. But you play a contact sport. Like, the nature of the game that you're playing is effectively violence. Like it is the name of the game, if you will, which is violence. Like, you stop another man against his will, and that is what either wins or loses you the game. Yeah. Right? Like, that's literally the purpose of football. A running back is running down the field. The name of the game is to hit him so hard that he goes backwards and you stop him from moving forwards. That's called a tackle. Right? And I don't know why this is a difficult concept. It seems that the NFL is actually intentionally trying to water down their game to cater towards the soccer mom.
It's about scoring. It's about putting up high scores, putting butts in the seat.
No, but
one of the things that we've always heard, all of us have heard this, offense puts butts in the seats, defense wins championships.
Sure, but there's no reason why you can't facilitate both. And what I'm saying here is you can have both. And you know what game we saw both in? Is the Chiefs and Bills this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Broncos breakdown. That's a good one, bro. That's a really good one.
Right, but what you're talking about is that big hit, and that's fine. But and there's nothing wrong with that. And again, this is kind of what I was saying earlier in the show, which is there's iconic hits that defenses or defensive players made over the entire course of the NFL. I mean, you hear, I don't know if you've ever heard Brady or Peyton Manning speak, but the reverence that they have for guys like Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher and Ed Reed and Champ Bailey, and I mean, there's a very short list of guys that, you know, those quarterbacks are putting at this, like, you know, vaunted pedestal. But Ray Lewis and Urlacher from linebackers, as an example, are two that, like, I don't care what fan of what team you are, period, I don't care. Those two guys between Ray Lewis and Urlacher, especially in that like heyday there of the NFL, they were fun to watch. Those guys were insane.
Yeah.
And
you can't leave out Jack Tatum either. He's the only person that actually killed somebody in an NFL game.
Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I did not know
again,
that.
but when you look at guys like that, they played the game at a different time and at a different level when violence was actually allowed.
Pads were bigger.
And so then the question is this, which is, why don't we stick with that? Well, the NFL is attempting to then appeal to the other 50% or 51% of the population, which is female. Yeah. And where I was going to go with this was,
well, you bring the Swifty.
I'm actually, well, yeah, that's ridiculous. But anyways, my actually question to you, DZ, with your significant other there is, I'm genuinely curious, given whether or not kids are involved or not, whether or not you have kids either together or just independently or not, what her thought is in terms of the physical element of the game being watered down and removed. Because because and this is my belief. I think that there's two different types of female fans. I think there's a female fan that enjoys the game because they actually like football and they want to watch football. And I think that demographic of female fans is actually pissed off, just like the male fans are of with regards to what they're seeing in football. And then I think there's another kind of, we'll call it fleeting NFL fans, which maybe they like the NFL because a certain player is dating a certain, you know, pop star, or you know, nudge, nudge, wink.
Wonder where that's for.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Or for example, you might have some female,
or if they're in the playoffs and it's a party setting, you know, just to hang out.
That's another one. And then the third one is that they really like a certain male player on a certain team that think is cute, and so they're like, I want to watch that team. But they have no allegiance to any individual team. They have an allegiance to the player. So I look at a player like Denver Broncos had Eric Decker, who had a bit of a female following, and they seem to follow him where he went. So he went to the Titans, and so a bunch of female Broncos fans all of a sudden became Titans fans because Decker was on the Titans. You know, things like that. You know, so
Jimmy Garoppolo is a good one too for that.
Well, yeah, porn star Jimmy, right? But I do wonder where your significant other is at when it comes to the physicality not being present, and then if that kind of garners frustration or perhaps admiration.
She's almost like a purist, and I don't know where she got it. Like, I think she's always had it. You know, her parents aren't really big football fans, huge baseball, but she what is it? The ladies
Tebow too.
Tebow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Tebow is a big one.
Vergan.
Yeah. Vergan.
But I don't know where she got it. I mean, my girl, she's probably not the best example because she's very like tomboyish. She works in a male predominantly ran, world, right? She plays a lot of sports, rides motorcycles, shoots guns, all that kind of stuff, and works on her own trucks, does change brakes, all that kind of stuff. But so she's a purist. She's she likes to dress in girly stuff and do all that, but she likes the sport for what it is, I think. And I think it's like, I think there's some women out there that wish they were like a part of football, because she hears me talk about it. I grew up playing football. I didn't play past high school, probably for numerous reasons, but like some of my best memories were playing football, like, and the stories that we had, and her best memories are her sports that she played. But it's something that we bond together when we watch the games. We both love the Chargers. We both, want to win. And, like she gets in, like I was kind of saying earlier, she gets infatuated with the rules. She's like dead on with some of these things. She's like, that was a hold. Why didn't they call a hold there? I'm like, well, there's a hold on every play. And she goes, look, that wasn't a catch. And I'm like, geez. And I'm like, that looked like a catch.
Who
And
are
she's like,
you?
no, it wasn't. And I'm like, anyways, I think women see things differently, and which they do, but I think she's like, she sees it. She's not happy with it, and she's like, this is, and she'll see stuff that she's like, this game's over. I'm like, what are you talking about? And now I'm like, oh God. Damn.
I got a question for you guys, just because the Raider Nation has women doing these podcasts too, like Spicy
I've seen
Raider,
that.
an ex Raider cheerleader with like Mother Moon. And I know, Richie, you've seen it, looking at Cap Channel, he brings on a bunch of, females onto his show that are Raiders fans. Are there, in your guys' world, are there, you see a bunch of women doing podcasts, for your teams? I'm just kind of curious. Now we're talking about this.
In the Chargers, I've not seen any women podcasts, but I've seen Chiefs have a lot of women involved, and then with the Raiders. And I don't know about the Broncos. I don't know if Richie's ever
Not
seen
really.
any. I have
Not
not
really.
seen any with the
Not
Chargers.
really.
There's a lot of Charger shows, but none with women. But I do know that I've seen with
You talking about? You got
Alex.
that super fan that is everywhere.
Who? Oh, what's her name?
I don't know, the Asian.
Yeah, I think she's a plant, though.
Yeah.
I think she's a plant. I don't know about these new LA fans. I'm just kidding.
They just like the lightning logo.
I think there's another aspect. There's a social aspect that I think women like. It's a family kind of affair also. And then look, there's a fashion aspect too, with the colors and the jerseys, and and I think the NFL's done a great job. Especially they updated everybody's jerseys for the most part for TV, right, to make them pop on the new 4K and all the HD TVs when that was coming out. Because cheerleaders are my favorite thing. God, I can't believe the Chargers got rid of the cheerleaders. Yeah, we don't have cheerleaders.
That's
anymore.
a crime, dude.
What? That is a crime.
Yeah, since they moved to LA, they have no cheerleaders, and I'm like, bring them back. I love the Charger girls; they were amazing. I know.
Do you know why they did that? I mean, that's like mind-boggling. It's like I've never heard that before.
I have no clue. They have like a drum group. I don't know.
One word: woke.
I don't know, because our owners are not woke. They're like Orthodox, like Eastern European religious. Like they're not.
No, but you're in LA. That's my thing.
Sure, yeah,
you're like, dude. I don't care who you are.
No, because the Rams have cheerleaders. I think I'm pretty sure they have. Yeah, the Rams. There is a Ram.
Maybe that was part of the stadium agreement. You can't have cheerleaders.
Yeah. Well,
what about the Rams? Do the Rams have cheerleaders? I mean,
yes. And there's a Rams cheerleader who's a Chargers fan, and I figured that out because I was like, she was like,
I'm pretty sure that was part of Sean McVay's contract.
What?
I like that. That should be a part of every coach's contract.
He required eye candy. He's a young dude, and that's just a requirement for him.
Have you seen McVay's wife? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
He's doing pretty well for himself.
But my point is that McVay has a reputation that I would assume has been earned. I would imagine that there's a reason why the cheerleaders are still present on the Rams, and that is likely due to McVay demanding it.
Dude, I felt like the Rams should have beat the Eagles when they played too.
I agree.
That's another story.
But with regards to what you're saying, DZ, I've always wondered just the divide within the female fan base of the NFL. And the challenge is that, same as you're kind of alluding to, there is not many female podcasters in the AFC West space, if you will.
No.
For me to engage kind of Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders in terms of, are they football purists or are they more, I'll call it football fluff, in terms of wanting to see these 45 to 52 offensive scoring bonanzas that have no real defense to them. I
know that there's like funny. We used to go to games in San Diego together, and my girl would actually get annoyed with. We'd have huge parties, go tailgate and stuff, and there would be like some friends and their girlfriends are wearing jerseys, and my girl would ask them questions about the player, and they'd have zero clue, and she would just be like. She had some choice words for me. She's like, this, like, just.
It's got to drive her nuts, right? It's got to drive her nuts.
Drives her nuts. But then I get it from the other aspect, like, sure, they just like that person. Like, they like the, so that's why I see the NFL going that route, because it's smart. It's a giant business. I don't know about that. Maybe. Saquon, though, he's my
I saw
MVP.
an interesting stat that no team that has ever lost to Kirk Cousins in the regular season has won the Super Bowl. The Philly lost.
What a bizarre stat.
That's a made up. I mean, come on, you can turn anything into a stat.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny.
Poor Kirk Cousins. He's such a good guy, though.
Poor Kirk
Cousins seems to be the dude that has the most amount of NFL kind of like we'll call it the Chuck Norris memes. Yeah, he's got like the Chuck Norris memes. Kirk Cousins, has met everyone's cousin, or he's dated everyone's. Like, he's got like all these like memes about him. It's hilarious.
No, well, Kirk Cousins is like the best person at working NFL contracts, is what it is.
Yes, he is.
I mean, no one's gotten more for less out of for Kirk Cousins.
Might be your QB next year, Jack. So
no, I hope not.
So
there's a lot of options for the Raiders. I mean,
I ain't trading for that guy. I ain't paying that type of salary for him.
No, I wouldn't.
No, you let him
$40 million.
I did look up like kind of the NFL history of like trading up from number 6 to number 1, and it looks like it would take 2 firsts, a second, and like a third to do that. I'm like, I ain't taking Sam Darnold. I ain't taking Kirk Cousins. I ain't spending that $40 million a year. I'd give up those draft picks, especially with an extra third for Devontae.
Oh, wow.
And I would make that happen and just roll with AFC 12. And you can pick up. Yeah, I think the NFL wants Sador. Doesn't mean me. I think I'd rather have Cam Ward than Sador, but
wish you would step back from that ledge,
my friend. Yeah. Jack, I'm telling you right now, I've seen what that man right there, the phone book quarterback.
I was gonna pull the other one up because he asked,
and the answer is no.
Yeah, it's been.
I don't know about Russell Wilson. I think I'd rather have, the other quarterback from Justin Fields over Russell Wilson. From the last thing I heard is that Russell Wilson was complaining that he wanted Pete fired and the general manager fired before they kicked his ass out of there and traded him to the Broncos.
I think he's had a rude awakening on his personal values since that point in time, though.
Yes, he has.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
So Jack, this is actually an interesting transitionary piece here, which is you've obviously, since our last show, the Raiders have acquired Pete Carroll. And just as a quick summary for the coaches now in our division, this is pretty insane, actually, when you look at the caliber of coaches. We got Sean Payton for my Denver Broncos, Andy Reid for Alex's Kansas City Chiefs on his way to another Super Bowl appearance. You got Harbaugh down there for the Chargers, who literally flipped the script in one season for the Chargers, I might add as well. And
absolutely.
And then you got Carroll, who's now coming in to the Raiders. My biggest point that I've been trying to make to a lot of Raiders fans and Broncos fans and anyone else who will bother to listen is they need to understand Pete Carroll has been one of the few old-timer style coaches in the NFL that was actually available, who's actually developed a quarterback out of college and got them to a Super Bowl in short order.
Well, he was a third-round draft pick in the way of Russell Wilson.
Multiple Super Bowls.
2 Super Bowls. That's right. And so,
one win, one loss.
Right. And so I just think that Raiders fans need to take a few steps back from that ledge.
Also won a national championship at the college level.
Yeah, he did that in USC. So I guess as my perspective as a Raiders fan, of course, the Raider Nation wanted Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson kind of used the Raiders as leverage to get his deal done. And then, you started looking at, Pete Carroll is in phenomenal shape. And you start looking at your guys' head coaches. They're all in their 60s too, all right? So if we're going to throw out age, but I think the Raider Nation is so sick and tired of we're going through coaches every couple years. We want stability, like what Max Crosby said. I want stability. I want to see this year in and year out. So with Carroll, he got if anyone doesn't know, lives under a rock, he got a 3-year deal with a 4-year option from the team. And he's in really good health. I mean, shoot. He looks better than a lot of guys in their 50s, in the way of body shape and how he takes care of himself. So hopefully age is not a thing. I mean, personally, he was not my first choice. And I said this behind the scenes. I said that, I really wanted, McCarthy. I think McCarthy's got a great resume too. And then I like Todd Monken. If we're going to throw it out there, young offensive mind from, Baltimore. And then I'm going Pete. But I see exactly what the Raiders are doing. They want stability. They want culture change. Yeah. They want his culture change. And Pete's got 3 rules that you got to live by if you're going to be a Raider. Rule number 1, you got to protect the shield. You got to protect your teammates. And if your teammates are doing something wrong, you need to step in and help your teammate out. Number 2, you don't whine. You don't cry. You don't complain. There is no excuses. Just get it done. Pete's a guy, he doesn't care if you're a first-round draft pick or you're a Russell Wilson third-round draft pick. Once you're on that squad, then the slate is clean. Whoever the best player is going to be, that's who's going to bring in. And just be early. If you got a team meeting or something like that, just be early because it shows the respect to your coaches is what it does. So that's the type of culture that he's trying to bring in. And I'm excited to see that. I feel like, every year, I think, AP did great as a rah-rah guy. I thought he brought people together. I see Pete being able to do that. And I just hope we get some continuity with this team. And I'm excited with Spycheck because we didn't get a chance to really talk about that. I mean, he's one of the guys that helped, when Tom Brady went over Tampa and, got him to go there. And so he's being brought over and he's like, the nerd. He's like the nerd of looking at players and matching things up and what he sees and bringing it to the table to the head coach and working it out. So from what I see, it's a partnership. Pete's not going to rule the roost, neither of him. So it's like a 50-50 split. So which I think is a good thing.
I got my comments on this, Jack, and then I want to throw over to Alex because he's coming from the best run organization within the division. So I'm curious to kind of see how he compares this. And guys, I don't care who you are in the chat. There is no denying that the Chiefs are pretty much solid within that front office, top to bottom, given what they've done, generally speaking, in the last 5 to 6 years at least. So, Jack, this is what my concern is. Do you know who was also a really great offensive coordinator with my Denver Broncos, got a lot out of the right players that were on the roster, but ultimately sucked when they were promoted? Adam Gase. Adam Gase who is again a very memeable guy because he had his eyes bulging out and he looked like he was kind of drugged out
He's
of his
just on
mind.
cocaine all the time.
Yeah, he looked like he was on like Adderall and Coke all mixed together. Exactly. But when you talk to Peyton Manning and hear Peyton Manning talk about Adam Gase and how he was able to work with him, Manning is glowing, like, 5-star review in terms of what Adam Gase can do and what he's like. And that's in large part because Adam Gase is a football nerd. He is brilliant. There is no denying that he is a brilliant football mind. He is. The problem is can he dumb it down for someone who isn't Peyton Manning? Right? There's a difference between Peyton Manning and the average quarterback. And in a lot of cases, that is a large gap. Right? And so,
Agreed.
It just is what it is. And so the question isn't necessarily, is Spytek smart at football and is he capable at analyzing folks? It also comes down to, can he adjust and come down to earth when it's required? Can he compromise when compromise is needed? Can he figure out A versus B? Can he work within a system, or does he have his own vision? And is that actually going to align with Pete Carroll or not? These are all elements within a team. Like, for example, when you look at that guy's team there, it is clear.
Richie, you saw him. He was on your Broncos team at one point.
He was, but that was back when Elway and everyone was here, and my team sucked.
Jim,
Look, if you expect sugarcoating from me, you're just not going to get it.
No,
Like,
I'm not expecting any type of sugarcoat. What the whole thing is like, if it helped, bring Tom Brady, who's right now arguably the best quarterback the NFL's ever had, and they're on the same page, and there's like seeing Pete Carroll being on the same page.
Jack, hold on. Let me quickly interject and then comment further. Name one top-notch NFL player that has ever transitioned into a front office and or coaching role and done well. Go.
We're going to find out.
He might be the only one.
He might.
He is one, though.
Dude, one out of how many players?
It doesn't matter. He's here.
No. But Jack, my point is that Brady could be a unicorn. And do you know what? If he is and can transition into that front office role and actually do all the right things, then, man, you guys have hit a gold mine. So good for you.
Well, and I also look at, Pete Carroll bringing, guys in the way of like, that are guys that are like, head coaching right now. So it's like you've got even like, Aaron Glenn, who from, Detroit, who was his first round pick in 1994, developing a guy enough to where now he's a head coach. So it's like, it's a culture thing too. So we talk about the McVay tree and so forth. And I'm trying to remember, there's 2 head coaches, I think right now that are in the NFL that were under the, Pete Carroll tree besides Glenn. So 3. So it's like, I think it's like a culture, again, it's a culture thing. And I think that's the whole reason why the Raiders wanted him to come in, is to change that culture. And yes, there's got to be a plan. And that's the biggest concern and question for all the Raider fans. And by the way, salute all you guys. I try to salute you when I see you. I'm sorry I don't mention your names, but we're on an AFC West show. But who's going to be the next guy coming out? Who's going to be the one in 3 years that replace him? And that's why I liked McCarthy, was because he's 58 versus, going to be 74 going into the league next year, who's got a great resume too. You got to have that in place because, nobody wants a Raider Nation anymore. We don't want the turnover. We don't want it every year, 2 years, that turnover. We want what that guy right there has. We want that consistency. We want that longevity, because when you have that, every year it just gets a little bit easier. And then when you get that, you're going for a 3-peat.
You're stacking bricks, man, every year. But then when you have to change GMs and head coaches, you tear everything down to the foundation again. And it's so tough to keep building things back up. And then what do? You're wasting guys in their prime. You know, like kind of like I think what Max said, he wants stability, right? And then all the Charger fans are like, we just want Justin to have somebody. You know, he's had like 4 freaking OCs, 3 head coach, 4 head coaches. I don't know how many. People are like, we just want some damn stability. We're right there with you guys, Jack. Like, so
I think you got it. I think part of the DZ. It's like part of the reason why Carroll came back. I feel like he wants a haunt Harbaugh, just because he likes
have a
going
lot
against him.
There is that
they have a lot of
rivalry.
history, man. I think.
Oh, and I remembered it's Dan Quinn, and it was Gus Bradley. Both of those guys have not. So Gus is not a head coach anymore, but they've been head coaches in the league following his tree too.
You do not want Gus as a head coach.
No, I've had Gus as a defensive coordinator like you.
Same, yeah.
No, but the thing is, there's no denying that Pete Carroll has had success. He's had coaches go on to have some success to varying degrees in the NFL, and that's true. But the point is that there has to be a cohesiveness between the GM and the head coach. And Spytek and Carroll have yet to work together as far as I know. And in addition to that, Carroll won and had his success with a specific vision. So it's important that the GM and the head coach are quite literally in lockstep. Andy Reid and Veach, there is no better example as far as I'm concerned in terms of head coach and GM.
No,
being
I agree.
It's ridiculous actually. It's quite amazing, and that's where the team vision and the broader scale and outlook on the team is so critical and so important. Is that you need to have that yin and yang. You need to have the GM to kind of hold the head coach in check, and you need to have the head coach reel the GM back in to make sure that they stay within the vision of the team. And there needs to be a mutual respect from both. I think that
I think they're a good match. And Richie, another thing too, I've learned this. It's like from what I understand, Champ has still got 1 more year left on his contract too.
Yes, and that's fine and good, but that's where I have some concerns. Like, why wouldn't you have promoted Champ into the GM role when?
Well, I'm going to throw it back at you because I like Champ Kelly, but why hasn't any other team want to interview him either?
They have, and they have interviewed him, just not this past cycle.
Who interviewed Champ Kelly this year?
Yeah, but the problem is that, well, first off, a lot of teams interviewed him last year before he came to the Raiders, right? And I think that there was some ambiguity in terms of who did what with the Raiders with Telesco, and I actually believe that Telesco is a bit of a fig jam kind of guy. I think Telesco wants to take credit for all of the moves so that he ends up getting all of the credit for those moves so he gets another gig.
I mean, I don't know who, again, Telesco's, the one calling.
It's like the Bieniemy argument there, like he was the OC of the Chiefs, but everyone was like, but we know it's Andy Reid's offense, so same principle applies.
Right. I agree 100%. Yeah. And I think that's what the problem with Kelly is that all folks that I have heard from that I believe have some credibility to their name have put Champ Kelly at a very high praise.
No, he's in high praise in Raider Nation for sure.
Right, but the problem is that it seems that for whatever reason he's not being given the credit, and I wonder if maybe he hasn't been given the opportunity to maybe do contracts and stuff like that, and so
no, he doesn't do the contracts. Well, they got another guy actually. When they reach out to players and so forth, there's actually a third guy, and I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a mental blank on him. That actually writes up all the contracts.
Kelly did well in Denver, Chicago. I think he was with the Niners briefly as well. And in addition to that,
Sharif, he was with the Bears. I know that for sure.
And in addition to that, he's also done well with the Raiders as far as I'm concerned as well, given their draft pedigree this past year. Now, where the Raiders are going to this to me is going to be extremely interesting. Is you brought in Spytek as your GM, cool. That would show me that you're willing to let Kelly walk at the end of this year, and I would suspect that given the fact that there may be a contract buyout or whatever the case may be, that Kelly's opportunity would then probably come 2026 rather than 2025 season as a GM.
If I
as
think,
long as
they go
as long
through
as the Raiders
March.
draft well.
So it'll be like 2026 in March if that would be the case. I hope not. I want them there. It's like, I think, those two minds working together
Why would
will
he stay
do
there?
phenomenal things.
Why would he stay there? Jack, you're at a job.
Unless he gets offered, to be an OC of his own instead of being an assistant, I mean, not OC, but general manager. Like, who knows how much they're going to pay him? It's like, we won't know until next year. We'll find out.
Chargers have a similar situation. They have a guy named Chad Alexander who he interviewed for Telesco's job. He worked under Telesco for years, and then I think he actually interviewed for the Raiders GM. He's a lot of people say he's an up and coming GM, like this guy, but I'm like, he hasn't got it yet, so we'll see, because Ortiz obviously got the job with Harbaugh, and that's probably from his brother's recommendation, I would assume, coming from the Ravens.
Again, breaking news, Patrick Graham, I want to talk about that too. And they did sign another assistant coach or special teams coach today. So again, getting Patrick Graham back is huge. I mean, it's huge. I mean, that was like the one guy I wanted back so hard. It's like, I don't understand, he's getting some opportunities, but he never gets chosen to be a head coach. And I don't understand. The guy's Yale. I mean, he's super smart. I love what he did with the defense. So before the last game, I think they were ranked 10th. And the last game, they kind of got smoked and they dropped down to 15th in the way of the defense for the league. The defense has been the catalyst of the Raiders the whole year. That's all we talked about. And you look at the free agents that are on this roster. Again, let's go back to Max. I want stability. I want consistency. And then you get guys like Spillane. I can't believe he didn't make All-Pro. I think he had, over 140 tackles this year.
Didn't he break a record with the Raiders?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up, DZ.
I think Spillane broke some sort of record for like the most tackles, like as a Raider, something crazy. And I know he's a free agent. I'm like, come to LA, buddy. We'll open you with arms wide open.
Come on in.
Yeah, because we got a bunch of free agents too, and we need to get some linebacker depth.
And then plus with him, you got Morrig, you got Epps, you got Coons, you got Hobbs. So with Patrick Graham coming back, the opportunity to like re-sign a bunch of these guys just went way up. I mean, I wherever Patrick Graham went, I bet a lot of these guys would have followed him because they're thriving in the system. They're getting them bigger paychecks. So being able to bring, with $108 million in salary cap, to bring a lot of these guys back, which the strength of the team was the defense. Oh, absolutely. So thank God, for bringing them back. And then the last guy they brought back, their special teams coach, and Tom McCon. They call him like McCon, not McMahon, but McCon or something like that.
He was there last year.
Yeah, so I'm happy about that too. I mean, the Raiders had pretty good special teams as a whole, but I'm just so excited, for Patrick Graham. And it's like, once the time to start re-signing players comes out, start extending them now. But the interesting name from Seattle is a guy named Darrell Bevel. Yeah. So watch his name for. He's the quarterback coach in Seattle. He's worked with Pete before. So again, Russell Wilson, and then what's his name right now? So
Bevel's probably going to be your OC.
Yeah, that's the name to watch right now. And I don't know much about him, to be honest with you.
I think my whole thing with Pete Carroll, like going to the Raiders, I'm like not excited about it, to be honest with you. But I'm not going to be like these other. I'm not going to be like these fans that are like, he's 74, he's old, he's all this. I'm like, nah, dude, this is an A+ hiring in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because what the thing what head coaches seem to be in the NFL are like leader of men, right? Like they are building up they're
Hey,
building
Joe
up
Brewer.
cultures. They're culture changers. And I think that this is whoever his OC is, that's has to be an extremely important decision for Pete because that guy eventually is going to be groomed to take over for Pete. And I think Pete is there to right the Raiders ship. You know what I mean? Like that ship has been going down, down,
100%.
down, down. They need to right that ship, steer it in the right direction, and have somebody take over and kind of in Pete's and Brady's and Davis's vision get the Raiders going again. And yeah, and I think it's going to happen. And like I said, I don't think any of us in this division should be excited about it because you guys were we swept you guys. Everybody swept the Raiders this year, and I don't think that's going to happen next year. Or
No.
I mean, there's a lot of things.
Yeah,
That
it
depends
doesn't
on
happen very often. It's like if it wasn't going to be, Patrick Graham, I thought they were going to like promote the defensive line coach, Rob Leonard, to try to keep some consistency with this team.
I think your biggest change is Pete Carroll. In my opinion, to be quite honest, I think you're going to see some defensive changes on your team because Pete Carroll plays a slightly different style, generally speaking, than Graham likes to play. And I think that Pete Carroll has a pedigree of showing long-term success, at least for with the right guys on the roster. I think that this is your first year of a rebuild because Carroll is going to want to mold the team in a certain fashion, in a certain way. I think he's going to be looking at this as a 2-year, big step process. And I think this first year is going to be what we all thought the Chargers were going to be this year, to be quite honest. I think that you're going to see the Raiders in a who fits and who doesn't mode right now. And I believe Pete Carroll has a 3 to 4 year window to really do the thing because I think that he is stepping into a bit of a Gruden style role with the team where he has got a proven pedigree. Yeah. And as a result of that proven pedigree, Davis respects it and understands that there is a period of time that it takes for that shift and change to occur.
They have the cap space too.
Well, they do, but I just think that you truly build a team through the draft and you backfill through free agency. So right now, this first year, the Raiders are in backfill mode. And I think it's going to take 2 to 3 years to really build through the draft as they earn those draft picks and draft correctly. And so I think there's going to be a lot of telltale signs in terms of the longevity and the long haul of the Raiders through the draft, because I can attest from my Denver Broncos, Elway thought you could build a team through free agency. And I'm telling you right now that the answer to that is no. Just no, because it does not work. You typically don't end up with a team full of all pro dudes through free agency. You typically end up with some decent players, but not elite players. Your elite players traditionally come through the draft and through you developing them on your roster to make sure they fit your team and the vision that your team has and that scheme and everything else. You look no further than what this guy has. And I think you're going to see a Chargers and Broncos team that are going to both make strides forward this year now with the solidified head coaches with a vision going forward. Obviously, KC already has that vision, and they've enacted that vision.
Our season's still going.
They're still going. That just kind of shows how it works. And then you have the Raiders that are now in the.
You guys are all in Cancun right now.
They're in the year one of that process, Alex. Right? They're in the year one of what you guys originally went through, and. It's
a retool, not a rebuild.
No, and I mean it's a rebuild. That's kind of the way. KC moved on and hired Reed once he was fired from Philly, and for a lot of the same reasons, I think the Raiders hired Pete Carroll, and it's a guy who's proven to have sustained success with a prior team. Not only that, I think turned Seattle into a year in, year out competitor. More than it was before he was there, and also has that Super Bowl pedigree, of going to it not only once but twice and winning one. So I mean, while Ben Johnson may have been like the sexy hire and like the move to make if you were going for the full blown strip it down rebuild and let's get him the QB, like, I think this is more in line with what probably envisioned Gruden to be with hiring him. And Gruden was making changes and you could see it. And then all that other
you
stuff
saw an improvement every year.
Yeah, and all that other stuff happened. So that's how I kind of look at the Pete Carroll hiring. Like, I think it was the smart, safe hire and honestly the perfect candidate for if the Raiders were, confident in some of the pieces that they already have, which, I mean, I don't think there's any denying that there are components to both sides of the football there that are pretty damn good and, can work with. So, and I think, too, kind of with Pete Carroll and someone who has the resume, it's easier to be patient with him. And, I think it's like Ben Johnson, say you hire Ben Johnson, you don't get a QB this year. Next year goes something the same, then everyone's like, well, F this. This is
fire him.
Like, yeah. I think with Pete Carroll, both front office and fans can be more patient knowing like, well, this guy did turn Seattle into
trust the process.
Yeah, like
right. I agree with that.
It's easier to drink that Kool-Aid.
I agree with it.
Yeah.
Alex,
He
is the exact opposite of AP.
Yes.
You
and I mean, talk about like he has like 180 something career wins. Like, I mean, you're bringing that what Max Crosby wanted. You gave him all of that in one hire.
And
it was pretty cool that Max Crosby saw, what his press conference, they met up. You couldn't hear what they were saying, but you can kind of hear what they've said, during the press conference if you watched it. And Spytek says, hey, we don't let good players go. And we don't let good players out of defensive end go for sure. So it's just kind of sending the word out to the rest of the league. That's like, you hear all these trade rumors and stuff.
Max isn't for sale is basically what the rumors are.
Right.
They quash them. So guys, we are going to save the Philly KC head-to-head matchup, deeper discussions and all that kind of stuff for next week's show.
Can't wait.
That needs to be really expanded on and discussed, both venue, player comparisons, etc. Alex, we're going to obviously lean on you for your insight into your team, but we obviously have our own opinions across the board. So we're going to dig into that next week. Obviously, there's been some ref talk over this week. I think that'll probably die down a little bit after the clear changes we saw a little bit with the Buffalo game for the most part, but we'll see. And then we'll wait and see what happens in terms of the Super Bowl game, but I do think it's going to be a good one.
No doubt.
And we'll get right into those details next week's show. And then obviously, as soon as we are done with next week's show, collectively as a whole, we'll start looking ahead and start talking about who fits who, why, free agents, et cetera, and go from there. So until next week, guys, where the West Side is the best side, we are all going to leave you. But join us next week where we get right into the Super Bowl talk. Congratulations, Alex, on the option.
Congratulations, bro.
Going for the three-peat. That's NFL history. So good for you.
A lot of hard work for me to get here. So
yes, I know. You did all the heavy lifting. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, the West Side is, in fact, the best side. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute.